My name is Larbi. I'm the head of the communications unit at Regent, and I'm happy to serve as the moderator for tonight's virtual event. So, by way of introduction, the World Youth Skills Day, declared by the United Nations General Assembly, recognizes the importance of equipping young people with skills for employment, decent work, and entrepreneurship. The theme for World Youth Skills Day 2024 is Youth Skills for Peace and Development. In commemoration of this year's World Youth Skills Day, this virtual series is being organized on the theme Repositioning for a New World Order. The virtual series will explore the global changes in the 21st century world of work and the skills required to adapt and thrive in this era. So far, this series has focused on three key topics, which have been emotional intelligence, effective communication, and leadership. So, for this third and final session of this virtual series, we are truly privileged to have as our speaker Mr. Yonas Berhane, who is the Communications and Advocacy Officer with the International Labour Organization. And he'll be speaking on the topic Effective Communication for Conflict Resolution. So, after his presentation, there'll be the opportunity created for those who have any questions to ask, questions on the topic, questions that may come up in their minds as we go through the session. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to drop your question in the in-call messages app, or you can wait for the Q&A session and you'll be given the opportunity to ask your question. And our speaker will endeavor to answer your question. So at this juncture, we'll start with Mr. Berhane's presentation. But first, I would go through his profile so we get a fair idea of his background and why he's earned the right to speak on this topic, if you may. So, Mr. Yonas Berhane is a seasoned expert with over 6 years of experience in strategic communication, advocacy, public relations, knowledge management, and digital marketing. His expertise spans various sectors, including healthcare, peace and security, brand communications, and IT. As a content curator, developer, and copy editor, Mr. Berhane regularly communicates with key stakeholders and target audiences. He specializes in developing and implementing efficient communications advocacy, knowledge management, and social media strategies. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Mr. Yonas Berhane. Over to you, Bernard.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so very much, Benjamin, or as I call him, Benji. This is the nickname that I actually gave you. Nonetheless, thank you so very much for that warm introduction, I should say. And hello, everyone, once more. So basically, I don't have much to say after what about myself, of course, after what Benjamin indicated. This is Jonas. As he said, I am an advocacy and communications officer currently working at the United Nations International Labour Organization. And maybe just to give you a bit about myself, I am also the Division E director, Division E in Toastmasters International. I'm sure most of you heard about Toastmasters. It's basically about Rotary, all about like self-development in terms of public speaking. Public speaking, as I'm sure you all know, it's a difficult challenge. It's a challenging proceeding because in the world, in many websites, people have been asked like, "What do you fear most?" And public speaking is one of it. So Toastmasters in general, it's all about developing leadership, enhancing your public speaking, at the same time networking as well. So for that, I am the Division E director. It encompasses Ethiopia and Djibouti as well. And I'm also Rotarian, a proud member of Rotarian, and also a peace ambassador for the Rotary in Ethiopia. And yeah, that's about it. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to halt my introduction at this point, and we can proceed into the presentation. As Benjamin indicated, I am delighted to and honored at the same time to provide you a bit about effective communication for conflict resolution. We're going to dissect both aspects: what is effective communication, and then what is conflict resolution as well. And then we're going to dissect what is conflict, and then how we resolve conflict, and how would be effective communication would be ideal to resolve conflict and dispute as well. So we're going to see this aspects in general. Benjamin, may I please ask you to for the first slide, well, second slide actually, after this. Thank you so very much. So the first in this point we're going to see as an overview, we're going to see the importance of effective communication in today's globalized and interconnected world. So we're going to see the role of communication, as I was mentioning earlier, in identifying and comprehending the conflicts, specifically and related to in this rapidly changing globalized landscape. So basically, as I've indicated, the objective was going to be to equip you guys, the participants, with the tools and also the strategies for resolving the conflicts through effective communication, how you can master that as well. So within the time that we have, we're going to see this aspect. Okay, so next slide. Thank you so much, Benjamin. So as you can see here, I mean, the theme is basically the New World Order. Exactly. I mean, the theme, as you indicated here, is um, repositioning for a new world order. And so my topic is also effective communication for conflict resolution. So I wanted to give you sort of like a highlight. What do we mean by a new world order? So, for those of you who researched or Googled about what the New World Order means, I'm sure you have encountered with various funny stories, various activity like Illuminati, Freemasons, and etc. But I think when we say that a New World Order, we are trying to indicate that it's the shift in the global power structure of governance and international relations in general. It uses or it used to describe a period of significant geopolitical change where traditional power dynamics are altered and new norms and challenge emerge in general. So I think when we historically, I don't want to go through that, but historically this mention or this term has been associated with the post-war period, after especially the Cold War, the World War II, as well as the Cold War, where the global community had to recognize itself around new political or economic realities in general. So in today's world, I should say that it's the new world suggests a rapidly and fast-paced changing the global landscape, characterized by the shift in power, technological advancement, and also the increasing and interconnectedness of nations. So when we say economic change as well, we can see the global economy becoming more multipolar with the rise of emerging markets and relative declining of traditional economic center in general. And also digitization is going to be one of the major factor over there. As a third point that I have raised on the presentation is the social change. So when we say the social change, we can see the demographic shift, such as the aging population the developed countries, such as we can see Japan, for example. There is an aging population. It has its own factors technically. Um, um, Yeah, it has its own factor, and then also the youth booms in developing regions such as Africa, for example, as I'm sure you know. The youth and then the children are booming and rapidly escalating, so that's so which altering social dynamics and the economic demands in general. So social movements is there advocating for equality, the human rights and environmental justice is there for social change. So perhaps as a key points here I have raised, we have seen the increase the complexity of the global um, um, interactions. Perhaps here we can see that, with the rise of new power centers and the non-state actors, such as, as an example, I can indicate the multinational and which affect the international relation, which makes it also more complex as well. So the traditional alliance being tested and the new partnerships or emerging often as well. So the rise of new power centers, as I've indicated, China, India, Brazil, and other significant global players is changing in the long-standing dominance of the Western power, is challenging the long standing dominance of the Western power as well. So it can encompass within or it can go underneath the rise of new power centers here. So as a third point, I have indicated the challenge posed by the globalization, digitization, and the cultural shift. So here, the globalization has Benjamin, I am on the first. Yes. The globalization has brought about, the unprecedented level of interconnectedness, but it also has led to, an increased economic disparities, the cultural clash, and the erosion of traditional identities in general. So here in this presentation, especially on the first, the New World Order, these are the aspects that I wanted to touch. On the second slide, we're going to see and then we're going to understand conflict in the New World Order. So I wanted to come in a chronological order. First, I wanted to see what I wanted you guys to see or present or deliver, for that matter, what the New World Order means and its implication in general, and then how we can understand conflict within the New World Order as well. So here I dissected first into types of conflict and then the causes of conflict. So in the types of conflict, we can see various aspects. So two aspects I have dissected: the interpersonal conflict, it also the organizational conflict, as well as the international conflict. So what do we mean by interpersonal conflict, right? So when we say about interpersonal conflict, it occurs between individuals due to, difference in opinions, values, personalities, or interest for that matter. So this types of conflicts are most common, as I'm sure you can imagine, and can happen in any setting for that matter, such as, with families, with your friends, among friends, or among your best friends, or between colleagues at work. So when we say this I've indicated this types of conflict can happen through the value change or personality change or interest for that matter. For example, if you can ask me, the Jonas that I am now and the Jonas that I used to be before are completely different Jonases, such as the Benjamin who is currently, as well as the Benjamin, in terms of value, in terms of personalities, in terms of interest in general, because of growth, because of the culture, because of the norm, because of the custom. It could happen in many ways. However, if that individual is waiting for you to be the same, and then you guys are not aligning with one another because of, as I was mentioning, your opinions, your values, personalities, etc., then this interpersonal conflict could happen with your friend or with your family member. So just to give you an example, we can see the workplace conflicts, of course, as well as the personal conflict. So in terms of workplace, this as 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 it's clearly defined within the title, it's a disagreement between colleagues over some task responsibilities of a project direction, it could be, or the personal conflict, it's sort of like an argument between friends or family members over um, um, drifting beliefs or expectations in general. So when we say interpersonal conflict, if unresolved, of course, it can lead to stress, reduced, collaboration, and a breakdown in relationships. However, when managed effectively as well, this interpersonal conflict, it can also lead to better understanding, stronger relationship, personal growth. So, just to give you like a highlight about this interpersonal conflicts. So my friend and I, my best friend and I, we used to be we last year, I presume, we went in Tanzania, Zanzibar, and then after we returned, so we missed our flight, and then we didn't have any dollars between us by with us, and so the problem was her. So I was so mad at her, and honestly, that upset, that anxiety, it never happened before with her, with me over her. So we fought, in the airlines. However, we had to wait our airplane still um, um, in that airlines, and for about like 6 7 hours. So we started talking, we started chatting. What happened earlier, why did we argue that much? So yes, I understand it's my fault, she said, and then yes, I understand I shouldn't say the way I said as well. So this is to say that when managed effectively, this interpersonal conflict, it can lead to stronger relationship, really. So me and my best friend, we have never actually bonded after that, like ever, because we had time to listen to one another. We had time to vent out. What It's not just about the missing airlines or her fault to missing the airline or the aircraft, but it's about, like, those small things accumulated, and then we burst with one another. So later on, I think when we resolved it, we formed a stronger relationship, and then we had like a personal growth, that I could say. So we can see also the organizational conflicts. When we say the organizational conflict, so it arises within or between the organization. So these conflicts can involve individuals, teams, or the entire department, and often revolve around issues such as, it could be like resource allocation, it could be strategic directions, or the workplace culture, for that matter. So perhaps we can see that intra-organizational conflicts within this, as an example, and inter-organizational conflict. So when we say intra-organizational conflict, as the name describes, it's a dispute between two different departments within the same organization, over the reason could be like many things. It could be the budget allocation or resource management or like human resource related. So but within the intra-organizational conflict, it's within. So as the inter-organization, it's sort of like rivalry between companies competing in the same market, or the disagreement between parties in a joint venture. Perhaps you can, as just an example, you can see, like, the Coca, as well as Pepsi, sort of rivalry between one another. I know, like, one here in these days, Coca dominated, but there's that. So this organizational conflict can affect productivity, the employee morale, because if I am going to um, um, clash between my colleague with my colleague or with my teammate, then my productivity would definitely be affected. My morale is definitely going to be reduced, because why am I even working in that kind of place, right? And the overall effectiveness of the organization is going to be dwindled. But it can also drive the innovations, as competing ideas and perspective are explored and integrated. So I'm trying to show you like the pros and cons as well. So when we talk about conflict, it's not just about like a bad thing, but like when there's a rivalry between, you're going to increase the productivity, you're going to innovate idea, because if one product, for that matter, dominates the market for eternity, then there's not going to be innovation, because for a fact that, like, whatever you bring, it's going to be sold by the market. But if there's going to be a rivalry, then of course innovation is going to increase, and perspective, or like new ideas would be explored and integrated as well. So we can see on the causes of conflict. So we can see here, miscommunication. There is the miscommunication, the cultural. So the um, yeah, and there is. Sorry, I'm trying to. It could be my network. Can you hear me, Benjamin?
Loud and clear.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, perfect, perfect. Okay. In that case, I can definitely proceed then. So the causes of conflict, as there is the miscommunication. So and then there is also the cultural and misunderstanding as well. So when we say miscommunication, we're talking about this something that is leading to cause of a conflict, which is a misunderstanding, can easily arise when information is not conveyed clearly or interpreted incorrectly, I should say. So this can happen due to to an ambiguous language, or like lack of context or assumptions that are not communicated better. So when you communicate, that is why effective communication is needed. There are some people that needs a clear guidance. If you wanted me to do something, I wanted you to tell me from A to Z. You don't necessarily have to start from like P to Z or something like that. Then in that case, miscommunication is going to happen. And of course, you cannot expect me to fully cover everything. So there are that kind of people who you can tell them from P to Z, and then they can still understand, comprehend the what you try to imply, and then do the task that you assign them. Or there are individuals as well who needs that kind of clear sort of guidance. So clear with miscommunication, clear sort of guidance is needed. And miscommunications can escalate minor disagreements into significant conflict. So effective communication is essential in preventing and resolving these issues by ensuring clarity, active listening, and feedback loops as well. So the second one, we're going to see the cultural misunderstanding. So when we say cultural misunderstanding, it's like the cultural difference can lead to conflicts when individuals or group have a different values, beliefs, or customs for that matter. So what may be acceptable behavior in one culture can be perceived as an offensive or inappropriate in another. So maybe just to give you like a most recent example, I'm sure we're Africans, almost all of us. So we have seen the Paris Olympics 2024, right? And I am sure most of you heard that the organization committee of the Paris 2024, they have actually issued an apology to Catholics and other Christian groups who were outraged by a scene during the opening ceremony. I'm sure you have seen that, right? And that evoked sort of the Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper painting with drag queens and transgender models, and a singer made up sort of as the Greek god of the wine. So the unin- so they said like it was an intended parody of the biblical scene, performed against the backdrop of the river scene, and when was actually intended to interpret the Dionysus, once again the Greek god of wine, and the rise awareness. So this clearly shows that cultural misunderstanding, of course. But once again, I think before doing something, the organizing committee of the Paris 2024, I think they should have. I personally, I'm absolutely neutral in those cases, but they should have understand the cultural meaning. Even if it was not intended that way, they have to see like from a different perspective. So I have this idea, but what does it mean for that matter? Blocking or like ignoring this celebrities on TikTok, like one individual, she said, let them eat cake. So let them eat cake indicates that Marie Antoinette, in French, of course, the queen, she said, when they rumor has it, of course, when they told her that the people are demonstrating, and then she said why, and then they said, oh, it's because they are hungry, and she said, let them eat cake then, right? So it shows that that culture of misunderstanding as well, but it can create cultural misunderstanding, the barriers to effectively communicate, and it can hinder cooperation as well. However, I should say it can be mitigated through the cultural awareness and sensitivity as well, and open dialogue that strengthen mutual respect with one another. So we can see the empathy and cultural sensitivity is there, and then also open and honest dialogue should be there. So as I was mentioning, those two things also can be integrated into the examples that I have said. So empathy needs to be there, and then also an open and an honest dialogue needs to be there as well, so that we can mitigate this cultural sensitiveness as well. The role of communication in conflict resolution. So I have indicated two things: the communication as a tool, and the key principle as well. So when we say communication as a tool, I have dissected into three. So the first one is mediation and negotiation, and then the second one is building mutual understanding and de-escalating tension. So let's see this, and then we can come up with the key priorities swiftly. So when we say mediation and negotiation, so we're trying to the mediation and negotiation, they rely heavily on effective communication to resolve conflicts. So in mediation, a neutral third party facilitates communication between the conflicting parties to help them reach a mutual acceptable solution. In negotiation, parties themselves engage in dialogue to find common ground and work out on an agreement. So when we say mediation, for example, just to give you an example, so as in Ethiopia here at least, or I guess in most African countries, because we have that interconnectedness with one another. So for example, if a husband and wife or like family members, there's a conflict between them, then instead of them trying to resolve it, I think they would mostly bring an individual, or like it could be a priest, it could be an elder or something like that. So that elder is going to mediate between themselves. So as a mediator role is to create that safe space for open communication, and then guide conversation, and then help those two individuals, it could be the husband and wife or family members in general, to explore solutions. So the success of mediation, I would say, depends on the mediator's ability to listen actively and ask probably questions and encourage collaboration with one another as well. So when we say negotiation as well, negotiation is between those two individuals. If the husband and wife, if there's a conflict between the husband and wife, or a mother to daughter or father to son, then they have to resolve the issue between themselves, like bilaterally. So in negotiation, communication skills are the crucial for presenting one's case clearly, and understanding the other's party perspective as well, and persuading them to consider a compromise. So when we say compromise, I'm saying meet me halfway through. When I say meet me halfway through, I cannot act like a king and then expect you to come 100% or even 90% as well, because when you are actually becoming humble and then try to negotiate, then clearly I should reciprocate that as well. So if we're going to meet me halfway through 50%, then I have to meet you 50%. Then with negotiation, reconciliation can come forward as well. So when we say we can go with building mutual understanding. So when we say the building a mutual understanding, so at the heart of conflict resolution, it is the heart of conflict resolution, and the need to build mutual understanding between conflict parties is necessary. So this I should say involve ensuring that each party fully understands the other's perspective, the need and concerns. So communication is the bridge that enables, and what is his or concern have a similar ideas, and we don't have similar thoughts, so that we can understand that they must, at least let's be open-minded and accept that. Even if we don't accept it, at least let's reconcile. So for this, I think dialogue and those to one another, and then feedback is also we need to give feedback, and then receiving feedback is essential to ensure that manage intended, I should say. So lastly, when we say de-escalating tension, so communications, it plays a crucial and an important role in this de-escalating tensions, in especially in conflict situation. So when emotions run high, carefully chosen words and calming tone can help to diffuse anger. Um, I think one time recently I was having a conflict with a friend of mine, and then he said something, and I immediately said, "Hey, so let's please not say something that we are going to regret later. We are both having a situation, we both are angry, but let's just put this, let's park this, parking the car, let's park the situation and talk later." So when you sleep over, when you slept on it, you're going to wake up like with a fresh mind, fresh perspective. On the key principle, I wanted to Benjamin, I wanted to indicate there's active listening, but I think when it comes to active listening in the strategies for effective communication is there. So active listening, there's a technique to improve the listening skill. So when we say active listening, so it's a practice of fully concentrating on what the other person is saying. So understanding their message and then responding thoughtfully at the same time. So it goes beyond just hearing words. It involves interpreting the meaning behind the words and showing that you are engaging in the conversation. So listening and hearing, as I'm sure you know, they are completely different things. We can listen a lot, we can hear a lot of things, but at the same time we can our minds are going to block if they're not that important. But hearing, I mean, those two things actually interchange one another. Listening is the most important, but you can hear many things, but your mind is going to block them if they're not necessary to you. But listening, I think that is when the active listening practice is essential. So what to as a technique, I would say I would put in active listening. So paraphrasing is there, reflecting feelings is there, as well as asking clarifying questions, not just clarifying but also an open-end question. So when we say paraphrasing, after listening, I think repeating what the other person have said in your own words to confirm the understanding. We're not trying to memorize what the other individual said. We just wanted to understand in our own language and then say it as it is as well. So when we say reflecting feelings, so we're trying to acknowledge the emotions that the speaker is expressing, which helps to validate their experience. So that could also come through active listening, and we can ask an open end as well as clarifying questions. So it's sort of probing for more information when something is unclear, to ensure a full understanding. So when you ask an open end question, you're trying to ask for elaboration as well. So that individual is going to assume or insinuate, for that matter, like, okay, I am being heard, my thoughts and what I try to indicate have been heard loud and clear. So we're trying to resolve conflict in this situation as well. So we can go with next slide, Benjamin. Great. So we're trying to see verbal and non-verbal communication. So I think maybe I haven't included, but I have to say just a little thing about what verbal communication is. So verbal communication is literally what I am currently doing, as in it involves language, and after listening as well, you're going to encode that message into something that you can understand, and then you can reciprocate as well. But when we say nonverbal communication, I have, as I'm sure you can see here on this slide, there are various. The first lady, I should say, she is a bit like, why did I do that? And then the second lady, she is saying that those all emotions. The third individual, I think he is really really angry. The fourth one, she's like, I'm out of here, like no, not here, sort of. So when we say nonverbal communication, it's sort of like a body language and tone or facial expression. You don't necessarily have to speak language to be heard, because your facial expression is definitely going to say it all. Like not just facial expression, but also your voice tone, your vocal variety, your body language also say it all. So when we say the body language, we have to observe gestures, we have to see the posture and facial expression to gain, insight into the speaker's true feelings and intention. um so in terms of tone and voice, I think listen to the pitch, you have to, and then the pace, and then the volume, to detect emotions like, anger or enthusiasm or uncertainty. Can we go the previous slide, Benjamin? Sorry, the previous slide. Yes, exactly, in the nonverbal communication. So, just to give you an example within the nonverbal communication, I always say to my mentees, for example, I mentee a lot of individuals. So, sorry, I mentor a lot of individuals. So I say, read the room. Read the room is very simple and effective, because you don't have to say to be heard. You don't necessarily have to speak at some time as well, because I mean, speaking, it's tiresome. For example, in my previous organization, there's this individual who wants to talk, and I was overwhelmed with a lot of work. And when she wanted to talk, and I would be like, and I'm just going to continue typing, like, yeah, exactly, yeah, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. If I'm saying that, you have to read the room. I'm like, I'm literally not interested. I'm just trying to engage with you and then show you that without saying, without speaking. Because if you speak that, listen, I am busy, you can say that, of course, but not to be perceived as rude. At least, in an in an formal etiquette manner, I'm trying to show her that I am busy, please leave me alone. But for some reason, that individual never understood my gesture, my nonverbal communication. She still continues. So if this still continues, of course, the nonverbal communication is clearly not clear, or she just tend to ignore it and then try to communicate. I have to use then the verbal communication, which is like, hey, listen, I understand, perhaps we can talk about it over a coffee, but for now, can I please work? So that kind of thing. So with nonverbal communication, reading the room is completely important, and we have to ensure that the conjugates between the verbal and then also the non-verbal cues. This is something that I have indicated as well. So when we say the framing and reframing as well, I'm trying to indicate that, it involves the presenting issues in a way, that strengthen or develop understanding, and turning conflict into constructive dialogue by shifting perspective, and also focusing on solutions. Maybe just to give you an example as well. For example, let's say there are A and B, right? So these two team members disagree on a direct project should focus on the cost saving measures, while the other perhaps argues for investing in innovation. Especially, I think this is something that I'm mostly arguing in my work, arguing with procurement unit. I'm sure they're not here, so I can talk as I wanted. So with the procurement, they are usually worrying about the financial or the cost saving measure. But me, I care about, especially, for example, if I wanted to hire one consultant, then I wanted to focus on that. Is this individual worthy? Does this individual has this innovative activity or innovative manner that can do the work very well? But then they're still caring about the cost effective manner. But if I am saying that I just need this, I'm going to focus on the innovation, but then the procurement units are going to say I only care about the cost effective measure, then we're not like trying to budget with our stance or our stand. So perhaps, like, just to return on the idea that I was giving, or an example. So the first member frames the issue as a choice between the financial stability and then also the risk innovation. So what we can do, I should say, is like, instead of seeing the situation as a conflict, it can be reaffirmed as an opportunity to balance both goals. So how can we achieve cost saving while also investing in innovative ideas that will lead to long term growth? You, instead of you trying to push your idea, then you can try to sort of build up with what that individual is trying to say. Identifying those practical tools in terms of how we can resolve or identify conflicts or disputes for that matter. So the first one is I should say is communications mode. So there are three steps in this communications mode. So there is listening, there is reflecting, and also responding. So once again, listen, reflect, and respond. Okay. So just think, so given that it's a tool, I gave you a tool, but trust me, we don't need a hammer, we don't need, screw or whatever you call it to resolve conflict, but I'm just putting the tools over there just for fun. So as I was mentioning, we're going to see the three steps model. So the first one is listen, reflect, and respond. So when we say in terms of the communications models for conflict resolution, when we say listen, the first step involves fully hearing what the other person is saying, like without even interrupting or planning your responses. So this step from the three is crucial for understanding the other party's perspective and gather all the information needed to address the issue. So sometimes when we listen to that individual, we might find that that itchy feeling that I need to also saying that I'm so sorry, but I think I don't understand this or something like that. But we need to fully listen so that that individual is also can feel he or she is fully heard. So after listening, after surpassing the first level of fully listening and fully engaging without interruption, reflection is there. So we need to take a moment. It could be like seconds, it could be like minutes. Of course, taking minutes through a conversation might seem like a bit awkward, but you need to ponder, you need to contemplate on what that individual said before even responding. So the reflection phase is that. So if you're a fast individual, then try to contemplate immediately, and then also like perhaps you can take a few seconds and then respond, or even a minute, it's okay. So after listening, you have to take a moment and then you have to reflect on what has been said. So this also involves like considering the meaning behind of the words, the emotions involved. Sometimes you could be really hot. You can be taken aback by the moment or the situation. You could say something. So instead of taking at the words as is, I think it would be ideal to sort of try to understand the meaning behind also the words, also the emotions that was involved. And then also the context matters as well. And then last but not least, of course, the last step is responding. So finally, after reflecting, after listening, after reflecting, what you're going to do is respond thoughtfully as well. So the response should address the concerns raised, provide clarity, or move the conversations forward. It's important that the response is respectful as well as considerate, because if you're going to respond with the same emotions, with the same tone or vocal variety, then it's really worthless. So what you should do is like at least be thoughtful and then be considerate. So sensitivity and then emotional intelligence plays crucial aspects in this one. And lastly, with the practical tools, we can see the interest-based relations approach. So in the interest-based relation approach, we can see the focus on interest but not position. We can maintain relationships as well as encourage collaborations with one another, instead of like dissecting each term. I can pass for the time base. So this is before my last slide, which is the mediation technique. So we can see the role of mediator in facilitating communications and the techniques for guiding conversations toward resolution as well. So earlier, I think we have seen the role of mediator in what mediation as well as negotiation. It seems like both are similar aspect, but completely different. As I was mentioning, for the mediation, we need a third party, but for negotiation, those two parties can resolve through effective communication, can resolve their conflict through effective communication. So when we say the role of mediator in facilitating communication, the mediator acts as a neutral party. So even if that individual very well, you have to act very neutral, so that you can listen both party. You know what they say, it takes two to tango. Even if that individual actually, betrayed you or like hurt you or something, clearly, nobody is sane for that matter. So clearly you have done something as well. So it would be good to listen both parties in a neutral aspect of it, so that can help the conflicting parties communicate more effectively. So in this case, the mediator role is to create a safe space where each party can express their views, ensuring that the conversation remains respectful and productive as well. So perhaps, like, in terms of techniques, so active listening, I have indicated what active listening means earlier. And then reaffirming is sort of like, it's related to paraphrasing, but the mediator helps reaffirm, negative or confrontational statements into more neutral, constructive language, making it also easier to find common ground for those parties. So we can encourage collaboration, as well as we can summarize and clarify, because one can say different thing, the other say the other things. So as a mediator, you can try to summarize what the other individual say, and then even bringing to the light as well. And then you have to clarify situations. So because regularly summarizing the discussion helps to ensure that everyone is on the same page, and also prevents misunderstanding from escalating, for that matter. So this is on the mediation techniques that I could indicate. So okay, so we can see the technology in in conflict resolution. So we can see that the use of digital tools for remote communication, and the pros and cons of virtual mediation. So I try to incorporate the technological aspects in conflict resolution, because at the end of the day, the whole theme that we came up with is like the new world order. And with the new world order, social media, website, everything, or like anything that relates to digital tool is absolutely crucial. So that is why the technology is important in also conflict resolution. So when we say this, so technology has become, of course, an indispensable tools in conflict resolution, enabling more effective communications, collaboration, and also access to information. So one significant application is the use of digital tools and for remote communication, facilitating conflict resolution process, even when parties are geographically dispersed. So perhaps in this, I think the one thing that the COVID-19 pandemic taught us is that we can effectively and efficiently use the digital platform for either it could be like remote working or everything. So I think even as research shows that a lot of people could be effective when working from home than even or working remotely than even working in the office as well. So using the digital tools for remote communication, it couldn't be seen lightly. So maybe to as just to dissect between the pros and cons of virtual mediation, we can see the accessibility, because virtual mediation, it removes the geographical barriers, making it a lot more easier for parties to participate regardless of the location. It doesn't really matter. One thing could be in Europe, the other could be like in the western part of Africa, or I could be in the eastern side of Africa. So everybody can take part in wherever they are, despite their different geographical location. So we can see cost effectiveness as well. So because travel expense is going to be reduced, so it's very cost effective for the virtual mediation. So flexibility is there. We can use various platforms from Google, what we're using currently, to the Zoom platform, to Teams, everything. And inclusivity is there. It can create a more level playing field, as participants are not judged based on appearance or physical presence, for that matter. When we talk about mediation, we're also thinking about appearance. But here in virtually, I think now I'm wearing like some shirts, because in Ethiopia right now it's 22 hours, so I can wear, at least I can be presentable. I think there is something that I'm sure, video on YouTube that was circulating on YouTube or other social media platform. It's like this individual, while working remotely, he wears suits and tie here, but he wears like sweatpants, or like even like pants for that matter. So the inclusivity part is there. And then the record keeping, so digital platforms, it allows you for easy recording and the documentation of the mediation process. Because even now, if I wanted, for example, I'm not sure if this meeting or training is being recorded, but for those individuals who did not listen to this, they can definitely listen, or in retrospect, going back to it, and then take notes, it would be ideal as well. So record keeping as well is something that I can consider it as a pros. But for the cons aspect, so the technical difficulties is there, because earlier, even when the situation occurs, when someone went out, we couldn't cast my presentation, so it creates like even a bit, that delay. So technical difficulties is there. The lack of non-verbal cues, so body language and other non-verbal communication can be harder to interpret online. So there's that. The potential for distraction would be there. You can listen to any echoes from my end, or I can listen any echoes, and that could definitely be distraction. Or reduced sense of connection would be there, because I most of the time, if I have a meeting, whether with my colleagues or whether with in my extracurricular activities, I want us to actually engage in person, so that we can have coffee or everything, because emotions in every way can definitely be cultivated within the interperson kind of relationship. But here, it's, as I was mentioning, virtually, there's no sense of that connection. So so some individuals may even find it harder to build meaningful rapport and then trust in a virtual setting. And then also the security concern is there. So, but like, maybe despite this challenge, I would say, for me, as personally, virtual mediation, it has become increasingly accepted, not just by me, but also through worldwide, and can be a valuable tool when used appropriately. So yeah, this is it. Lastly, Benjamin, the last slide. So yeah, exactly. So we can see the conclusion. So we have the summary. I have dissected into three: the final thoughts and call to action. So maybe just in retrospect, to go through, I have indicated what the new world order means. I have defined what the new world order. We have discussed on the global challenge, the political, the economic, and then the social aspects of it. And we have seen the key points, of course, on that. We have seen or understood, I believe, at least conflict in the new world order. We have seen the types of conflicts: the interpersonal conflict, the organizational conflicts, as well as the within the organization, so the intra-organizational conflict, and also the inter-organization conflict. And so we have seen the causes of conflict as well. So we have defined what in the context of it: the political conflict, the economic conflict, and the causes for conflict as well. So there is the miscommunication, the cultural misunderstanding. I have given you an example which recently happened in the Paris 2024 Olympics. We have seen the power dynamics in resource competition. And I'm taking some, I'm looking at some notes exactly. So we have seen also the technological and ideological devices. We have seen the role of communication in conflict resolution, and also the strategies for effective communication. Active listening is the nonverbal communication, and framing and reframing, also practical tools for conflict resolution and mediation techniques. And last but not least, of course, the technology in conflict resolution was there. So I think this is it. Last slide, Benjamin. I said last slide. Oh yeah, I just wanted to impress you with midese. I hope that is the word that I should use in. I just googled it. Sorry if I butchered it. Midese, thank you, and then in Ethiopia we say amasaganalo. All right, thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I think I'll give you E for effort. That was a very good effort at saying Madasi. Thank you. I think you've demonstrated that you really understand what it means to be empathetic and have cultural sensitivity. So thank you so much, Jonas. It's been a very insightful presentation. Lots of actionable insights. And one thing you mentioned that really spoke to me was the fact that conflicts are bound to occur in every human setting. And it's not an issue of conflicts um, not happening, but it's an issue of you putting steps and taking steps to ensure that when these conflicts do happen, you resolve them. And I love what you said about the fact that when conflicts are managed properly, they can actually lead to personal growth and improve relationships. So it's not all doom and gloom on conflicts. So thank you once again. So, ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, we'll proceed to the question and answer session. So, if you have any questions on Mr. Jonas's presentation or on the topic of discussion for tonight, do feel free to drop your question in the Q&A session, the in chat box, or you can raise your hand virtually, and you'll be given the opportunity to ask your question. Stanley, you have the floor.
Yeah, uh, very nice presentation. I'm Stanley Zamnan from University of Jos. Hello, can you hear me? I want to commend the presenter for giving justice to his presentation on the world youth skills of conflict resolution. The effective of communication for conflict resolution has been the major problem we had. I just pinpoint the Palestinians and Israelites conflict. I think there is a miscommunication in their regional conflict and issues. And this conflict tends to be affecting the world, mostly the youths. I want to ask a question on: was it proper for the Algerians to raise a motion on the school bombing of Hamas by the Palestinians, and their communication skill in the UN summits was not effective? So I think the world should adopt the effective communication in resolving some issues. Thank you, and have a blessed night.
All right. Thank you
I'm
very
okay.
much. I don't know, Jonas. I don't know
Yeah.
if you got the question.
Sorry, the last part I didn't get it. Could you kindly perhaps rephrase that a little?
Okay. I said the effective communication,
Mm.
was there an effective communication between the Palestinian ambassador and the Israel ambassador in the UN summit yesterday?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes,
Can
because I
we?
can see
Should
no
we?
verbal. Yeah.
Great. No, I was trying to indicate Stanley, right? Thank you so much, Stanley, for that. Benjamin, if there is any question, perhaps I can go
Yes, sir.
directly,
Yeah.
um, or try to answer like one by one. Which one
Yes,
do you
you
prefer?
answer
Yeah.
one by one.
Okay. I'll be completely honest with you, Stanley. I haven't heard the yesterday, what you said yesterday, within the UN summits with the Israeli ambassador as well as the Palestinian Philistine ambassador. Their communication, or like with the miscommunication, with their effective communication aspect. So. Although I haven't heard of it, perhaps like just to give you like an idea, I think I felt like there is a lot of miscommunicate on since the previous times, like it has even been written in the Bible. Perhaps like although this has been written over there, or like it has been going on for decades, surely there should
Mm.
be like that communication with one another in terms of resolving. I should say perhaps like when I mentioned that the earlier, for example, the causes of conflicts, of course that there is a miscommunication, as well as the cultural misunderstanding, or also the power dynamics and resource competition is definitely there. Because when we say
Mm.
the power dynamics and resource competition, I think it's I'm trying
Mm.
to show you that it goes beyond even just the communication aspect of it. Because first, like, what was the conflict between them? So the power dynamics is changed, the resource competition, because if for example Israel wanted to have like more lands or like more access, then of course Palestine is definitely equal as well. I'm trying to be as neutral as possible, but for that to be summit, it should have been
Yes.
ideal for them to like negotiate. And then by negotiating,
Yes.
once again, it's not just about I am here and then try to come like 90% of it. No, it shouldn't work like that. Meet me halfway through, as I was mentioning earlier. So Palestinians, they have their own stand, and then Israel has their own stand as well. But the idea is, how can we reconcile those issues with one another? Because Israel says something and then Palestine says something, and then if they're not even trying to come that halfway through or 50%, then clearly it's not working. So this code also incorporated in the communication, and then having miscommunications one underneath. I hope I tried to answer.
Yeah. You did justice to it. Thank you
Great,
very
great,
much.
thank you.
Thank
Thank you very
you for
much.
that very, practical case study on conflict resolution. I've seen that Mr. Kofi Bampo's hand is up. Mr. Kofi Bampo is the Deputy Registrar in charge of HR and Administration at Regent. So, yeah, Mr. Bampo, you have the floor, please.
Right. Thank you so much. And that's a very good presentation. I think we should learn a lot from that. Kudos to you, Jonas. But I have a question. You realize that journalists play a very critical role in global communication, and now people can use social media to increase conflicts. I'm looking at the conflicts currently going on between Ukraine and Russia, and Hamas and Israel. They are likely, I believe, if you are not careful, other conflicts might occur in different areas in the world. Jonas, what are some common communication techniques that journalists should adopt to prevent conflict from escalating? Because the journalists can escalate even this Russian-Ukraine war. It can also escalate the Hamas-Israel war. And journalists have a role to play to ensure that peace prevails between these countries. What are some of the common communication techniques that they should adopt to prevent conflict from escalating?
It's a great question, actually, Coffee. So journalists play a crucial role, not just in preventing, or even for that matter escalating conflict, but in a lot of ways, because I know so, because although I am not one. So I think when because earlier, as I was indicating, journalists play a crucial role, because they have this voice to persuade the public, because journalism is not just about reporting, but also it's an advocacy aspect. Because if you're going to talk about something like on and on, repeatedly, then you are trying to sort of either create awareness, but at the same time trying to influence those individuals. So as a journalist, of course, if you are trying to sort of say something that hasn't happened, or trying to insinuate something and then try to showcase that point, of course it's definitely going to create that dispute. So maybe just to give like that insight, I should say reporting on ethical basis is completely important. At the same time, cultural sensitivity is there, because just because you assume that thing, it doesn't necessarily have to be it is true, because the culture is involved, custom is there, and etc. So once you have to do you have to report in an ethical manner, but then also maintain that cultural sensitivity as well. So trying to be alert is really good, but also just because something happened, I don't think it should be reported, all the time, because at least you have to know, is this something that is worth to the public? If it's not, or like, is this something that would worry the public, or like, is this something that would create or
Madam Patricia Beatrice Miracle Jima. She says, thanks, Jonas. Great presentation there. All right. So thank you for your very good feedback. She happens to be from the Linguistics Association of Ghana. So thank you, Madam Patricia, for connecting and being a part of this. So once again, if you have any questions, do feel free to drop your question there in call messages app, or you can raise your hand and you'll be given the opportunity to ask your question. I wanted to ask, what do you do if one of the parties in a conflict says no to mediation?
Okay, thank you so much, Benjamin. So it's a tricky question, I should say. I don't know. I mean, of course, it depends on the matter. Sometimes when as I've indicated, on the mediation, the different, I've tried to indicate the difference between negotiation and mediation. So with the negotiation part, just to individuals, and with the mediator, as you have to have, a third party to make that negotiation or to mediate between those two parties. So if one individual or one party says no, I should say then, what is the cause? Because, for example, if one says like, no, we don't need a mediation, for example, let's say me and my brother, I don't want another party because I felt like we have two family secret, not family secret, but like two family related or concentrated kind of dispute. So I don't want to perhaps like bring another individual. So this means that if I am coming up with that, I'm just, scenario, if I'm coming with the idea of like no mediation, then I believe with my interpersonal skill to resolve conflict, or the dispute between my brother with my brother as a negotiation. So so in that case, we can negotiate with one another, in various aspects of it. So I guess like that should also be respected, in general. However, if negotiation is not going to happen, and then if I say like, I could, so there are two aspects of it, right? Like, I am saying I don't want this mediator because perhaps like I wanted to negotiate, and with negotiation I just wanted to have a bilateral talk with my brother. But if I say that I don't want this mediator because I guess in that case maybe that mediator could be like influenced already with my brother, influenced as in it could be his best friend, it could be his mentor or something like that. So that clearly shows that there is an advantage to that person, you know what I mean? So clearly I would identify that that mediator is not going to be a neutral, because there is going to be like a standpoint from the inception. So that means I might need a new mediator. So as a mediator, earlier as I've indicated, um, you have to be as neutral as possible, to listen carefully and communicate more effectively as well. So I guess like I can show both points. So I don't know if I responded, but I should say if I say no, then I will go with negotiation. But if I say no in the other direction, then that means I need another mediator that doesn't have like a conflict of interest. Over to you.
Sure. Thank you very much. All right. We have some more comments. Mr. David Lai is the speaker. That's the SRC uh, leader for Regent University College. And he says great insights from Mr. Yonas. So that's some additional good feedback. And I think I made a mistake with designation of Patricia. She's Professor Patricia Beatrice Mirikujima of the University of Mines and Technology, Takwa, instead. All right. So thank you very much for that correction. You spoke about workplace conflicts, and I wanted to ask, how do you manage a conflict between a superior and a subordinate? That's my question, very basic. How do you manage conflict between a superior and a subordinate? You spoke about conflicts between colleagues, but I'd want to know how do you manage that? A conflict between a higher upper and a subordinate within a workplace setting?
Hmm. Okay. So I think this type of conflict, I believe it's going to be resounding with the interpersonal conflict. Sorry, the organizational conflict, or also no, sorry, it's not going to be on the organizational conflict. I would say it's going to be interpersonal conflict. I mean, yeah, interpersonal conflict, because for it to be, for one conflict or dispute to be to go underneath the organizational conflict, it should be within intra-organizational or inter-organizational. So, but what your question relies mainly on the arguments between, you know, or the disagreement between colleagues in general, because at the end of the day, if that boss that even if she or he is going to be my supervisor or boss, we're still going to be colleagues. So it's going to be within the interpersonal conflict, it's going to be sliding within that aspect. However, I think, just to respond on your question, if there's a dispute with a colleague or like with your boss, I know, I mean, sometimes I think understanding that um um I'm just going to tell you from the experience. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to respect the hierarchy. I mean, sometimes I think it might not just be you, because I think the issue could arise, or like could come from the boss or like the supervisor themselves. But like, perhaps to mediate, or sorry, to understand the issue better, you have to comprehend what your boss needs first, right? You have to do everything from what you can, at least from your perspective on, and from your ability. You need to tackle, you need to try to tackle that situation or that issue. But if it's kind of surpassed that level, I think perhaps having a conversation, having a true dialogue would definitely do better. Maybe he or she is insinuating something that you're not, or also you are trying to read, you are trying to read from a different perspective as well. So if you can, I know it's totally difficult because we don't have that culture as Africans to have that candid and frank kind of dialogue and conversation, but it would be ideal to have that. Sometimes I think, beyond um, um, beyond your work, I think that conflict can arise, can even surpass with your personal level. The professional environment can escalate into the personal aspect into it. So if it does, then I think, once again, involving the HR or involving any other hierarchy would be ideal. But if it is something that you can tackle in your personal aspect, reading the room, and then also try, you have to understand everything is not a battle. You have to choose your battles as well. So I don't know. I talked a lot, but I'm sure even if I went around the bush, you can understand. It's a bit tricky question, Benjamin.
Yeah. I like what you have to choose your battles wisely, and you have to respect the hierarchy as well in the organization. And I think you also mentioned that it'll be helpful if you involve the human resource department, since it's workplace related. And of course, as you've mentioned earlier on, emotional intelligence is also very critical in managing some of these issues, being able to read, you know, and all that.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you very
definitely.
much. One more submission from Adam. I think we can wrap up after this. He says this has been a very informative and refreshing session. Thanks for the presentation. Okay, so that's some more feedback. All right. So Professor Patricia says she thinks the most practical solution would be to not pick the hammer. That's her response to the question I asked about, you know,
Mm.
resolving a conflict between a superior and a, subordinate. What do you think about that? The most practical solution would be not to pick the hammer. I think that lines up with what you said, that it's not everything that should be adversarial, right? So, or what do you say?
No, no, absolutely. Not much to say. I think it's definitely self-explanatory. I mean, it can be dissected into other terms, because not to pick the hammer, as in, you have to understand you are the subordinate. You shouldn't try to outshine the boss. There are various aspects into it. So I think understanding your level would be ideal. Your level, as in, like, humbleness is really good, even if it's a workplace environment. But at the end of the day, while being humble, you can be professional. But at the same time, like, your boss is your boss, or your supervisor is supervisor. So don't try to outshine them, or don't, I mean, don't try to do all those silly things, but do your job, like, try to bury your head, do your job very well, and then once again aim higher, because at the end of the day, if you aim higher, there's no reason that you could not reach or even surpass that your boss's level. But until then, at least do your job very well. Like, that's all that matters, I would say.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, so time is fast spent. I think at this juncture we can end the session. Do you have any final takeaways you'd like to share with us before we wrap up?
Oh, maybe just to, I should say that, that perhaps, like, as an indication, I could say that, the integration of digital tools in conflict resolution has changed the way of disputes, how disputes are handled, enabling remote communication and collaboration regardless of geopolitical boundaries. I indicated the Zoom platform and etc. Just to say that the virtual platform is important as well, and then we have to leverage that. But in general, maybe just to talk about, I mean, even if I've mentioned the new world order, all I wanted to emphasize is the effective communication aspect of it. So just because you communicate, it doesn't necessarily mean that that is effective, because for effective communication, you have to listen, you have to be empathetic, you have to also respond without any conflict. I mean, um, um, conflicting priorities, for that matter. So when we say communication seems like, it's just, even as a work, it seems just, oh, as a support activity like finance or HR, or something like that. But I think to communicating means it's also resolving conflict, it is forming understanding, it is building trust, it is everything, for that matter. So communication is key in every way. And for to tackle, or to address any conflict, I guess, like, we need to address all those things that I have indicated. Of course, I haven't indicated everything, but at least let's try to listen with one another, let's try to meet halfway through, because I cannot just sit by and expect you to come 100% if I'm not a king or a queen, for that matter. So I have to be humble. Humbleness is there as well. So let's meet 50%. Let's reconcile. Let's mediate or negotiate with one another. And that is how we resolve conflict, I should say. And last but most certainly not least, if you need the slide, I'm sure it's going to benefit you. I'm going to share it with Benjamin, and then you can find it from him. So this is all I can say for now. Benji, over to you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yonas Berhane. Once again, it's been a very insightful and enriching presentation. I took a lot of points from your presentation. I have about two A4 sheets full with thoughts from your presentation. And if you wouldn't mind, I'll go quickly through the notes I put together on this session for the benefit of those who joined later on. So you started off by talking about globalization and how it's helped brought about unprecedented changes in society. You spoke about the types of conflicts. You mentioned interpersonal conflict, and you defined it as conflict occurring between individuals due to differences in values, personalities, norms, and customs. And you mentioned that conflicts can occur between friends, families, and within workplace settings. You also spoke about the fact that conflicts can lead to breakdowns in relationships, but when properly managed, can lead to personal growth and better relationships. And you spoke about intra organizational conflict, which you defined as conflict that occurs within an organization. And you compare that with inter organizational conflict, which is conflicts occurring between companies or organizations. And I think you spoke about the fact that conflicts occurring between organizations can drive innovation, which is one of the pros to conflict. And you spoke about cultural conflicts, and you explained that cultural conflicts could occur because what one person considers to be appropriate in one particular culture may be inappropriate in a different culture. And you strongly emphasized on the importance of empathy, cultural sensitivity, and open dialogue. I think you also spoke about communication as a tool for mediation and negotiation, and how communication can be used to de escalate tensions. So I would also breeze through this as well. You spoke about the importance of active listening, which is listening and acknowledging the other person's perspective. And I think the problem, I've heard it said before, that we normally listen to respond and not listen to understand. And I think you highlighted on the importance of listening and reflecting on what the other person says before you respond, which I feel that is very critical. And lastly, you spoke about non-verbal communication and the need for us to not just listen to the words that people share, but also their body language, the tone with which they speak, and also we try and read the room as well when communicating. So this is just a recap of some of the notes I jotted down in the course of your presentation. So thank you so much. And time is fast spent. We are so grateful to you for spending your time and being so generous with your time and insights, and for sharing all that you've shared on conflict resolution and how communication can be used to resolve conflicts. And we do not take for granted your time that you shared with us. I know it's real late in Ethiopia. I think it's about 10 p.m., right? And we don't take for granted your time that you've invested with us to share all these insights, actionable steps, and strategies that we can practice in resolving conflicts and improving our communication. So I'd like to say thank you once again on behalf of all of us. And we wish you much more success in all your endeavors going forward. And we hope you'll be able to make some time again for us sometime soon to share your insights with us again. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. At this juncture, we'll draw the curtains to this concluding session of the World Youth Skills virtual series. I hope you found this series very impactful and very helpful and useful. And I hope you learned a thing or two that you can practice in your workplaces, in your organizations, and in your engagement with friends and family. And I do not take for granted your taking time to be part of this session. We don't take for granted you investing this time with us and learning all that you've learned in tonight's session. So, ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, I'd like to thank Enoch Damtse, who's assisted with the technical aspect of this recording. He would work on the recording and he would upload it on YouTube. So, in case you'd want to connect and listen to the presentation that we listened to tonight, you can connect with our social media channels on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Regent Ghana, Regent Gram on Instagram, and Regent Ghana on Twitter. So thank you once again for your time. And until next time, it's bye for now. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much, Benjamin. Ciao.
Thank you too.